5 security men killed in an encounter in which a key Jaish-e-Mohammed terrorist believed to be the mastermind of Pulwama has also been killed. An army major is among the 4 army men dead today. A police commando is the 5th fatal casualty. The terrorist has been identified as Kamran, a Pakistani believed to be a key aide of Masood Azhar, the Jaish-e-Mohammed founder who lives in Pakistan. Kamran's killing is considered a big boost for security forces after the attack last week in Pulwama, in which 40 CRPF soldiers lost their lives. That was when a suicide bomber who was a local recruit blew himself up. Sources say Kamran was responsible for recruiting, radicalizing and training terrorists in the Kashmir Valley. A second terrorist killed today was Hilal Ahmed, a local Kashmiri bomb specialist. Well, on the program tonight, first we're going to focus on some of the key questions that have remained unanswered in the last few days. As the country stands by those soldiers who lost their lives, we have to, however, ask some very difficult questions on why this repeatedly keeps happening to our security forces, whether it has been in Uri, the Pathankot airbase attack and other attacks that have taken place over the last few years. Are we not learning any lessons from the past? And what are the lessons that we can learn from Pulwama? In fact, some of those key questions, we are going to try and answer those tonight. Ambassador K.C. Singh is joining us here in the studio. We also have Harinder Baweja, editor of special projects with the Hindustan Times. General Atta Hasnain joins us. He was the corps commander in the Kashmir Valley. We'll be joined by Dilip Trivedi, the former DG of the CRPF, very shortly. Ambassador K.C. Singh, to you first. Very, very tragic. Another tragic day in that sense. I mean, if the guy who has been killed today is indeed one of the masterminds of Pulwama, that is a big boost for security forces. But I think we're not asking enough tough questions on why this keeps happening to our security forces, to our army camps, to our air bases, to our convoys.
See, the questions are 3. Firstly, we had not had a car bombing till now, after the one against the legislature there. It's often said about 26/11, the attack on America, that it was not a lack of intelligence. They knew they are Arab boys learning to fly planes, but it's a question of lack of imagination. So sometimes you get bits and pieces of information, but you don't imagine they are about to graduate from Fadain to a car bomb. Now, obviously, there is a problem there. If they could know the next day, literally, who the bomb maker is, why didn't they catch him in the first place? How quickly did they get the information? So that means some kind of information was available, but they were not able to link it to one. And always these incidents, there'll be multiple mistakes. Somebody said maybe they planned it earlier, maybe they postponed it earlier, maybe they were waiting for a big convoy to move. So no, it's not something that they created the bomb 2 days ago and the convoy came and the two met. So there must have been immense amount of preparation, and then they waited because of whether the convoy got delayed. There is just such an easy target because they were just not prepared to shut the traffic down, which apparently they were doing many years ago. So you can blame them now, but the point is you become security agencies also, as they say, you always prepare for the last attack, not for the next one. And this is not just the Indian forces. This happens all over the world. It happens to Americans all the time. So it's a question of remaining alert, seeing how the, for instance, I don't think enough attention has been paid that by sacking the government, using only a strong arm, the strong arm tactics, why are local jihadis coming up, local recruits coming up? And then there is a question of why did Pakistan immediately have Jaish-e-Mohammed take credit for it? After 9/11, 26/11, they never took credit. Lashkar-e-Taiba. So there's a deliberate thing. I think Pakistanis set it up, and we sort of we were so busy with just day-to-day handling of security that nobody looked over the horizon that this could happen.
But General Hasnain, should we, in a sense, not have anticipated, the possibility of a car bomb attack? I mean, it's a tactic that's being used in Afghanistan all the time. It was frankly a matter of time before it was going to be used here. So just your thoughts firstly on, whether we were just, really caught unawares about the nature of the attack. We had a former CRPF official here the other day saying, well, we've exactly what Ambassador K.C. Singh said. We've not dealt with this phenomenon before. Now we have to. Yet, should we not have anticipated it?
Look, Nidhi, I think we need to be aware of one fact, that we are fighting a 30-year-old hybrid war in which new contingencies can arise almost every day. And while I do agree that I personally have been prophesying, assessing that the return of the car bomb, the return of the possibility of the suicide bomber and the IED is all going to manifest in the near future. I do not think the intelligence agencies have the capacity to be able to pinpoint the spot or the date and the time at which an event like this can take place. There was a generic warning definitely given out by the intelligence agencies. I've seen that personally in writing also. That was supposed to warn everyone to be careful. But this kind of a generic thing in an environment such as this, unless a trend is noticed, unless there's a series of IED attacks, the manifestation of intelligence focus in the form of tasking does not emerge. And that is the challenge here. I'm not justifying it in any way. I'm not defending the failure of our inability to protect our Jawans, but I'm just trying to draw attention to the reality of the situation, that we have to understand this, that in such situations, there are people who are there to harm us, harm our troops, harm our interests, and that they will go to any extent to do it.
Well, I totally understand what you're saying, sir, but at the same time, let's look at another unanswered question. Were standard operating procedures not followed? Did the road opening party fail? Now, the road opening party is a very important, sort of procedure in Jammu and Kashmir, just to tell our viewers, where, entire stretches are checked for landmines, for IEDs. It's been happening for years now, and that is how vehicles are allowed onto highways and roads. Now, here, it's very obvious, sir, that the terrorists who did this were aware of the movement of the convoy. It was a convoy of 78 cars, of buses, vehicles, and they knew exactly when to bring their car out from this side lane and blow up. I mean, that is something I think that should worry us. If there was a car standing on the side of the highway waiting to get onto the highway, should that not have been something that the forces should have been alerted to? Because you have forces all along the highway.
Nidhi, I think we will have to await the investigation to tell us how exactly this happened. My information coming from different sources is that there was a vehicle actually following the convoy, and that at some point it attempted to try and ram into this bus. It failed in many attempts and finally succeeded in doing what it did. And also people should be aware that this is not the good old route from Pampore to Avantipur to Anantnag on which this bus was plying. This bus was actually on the up convoy from Jammu, and it was coming along the new highway. The new highway is through green fields completely. The built-up areas are comparatively much lesser in that area. Having said that, yes, I do agree that when there is road opening done, the ROP procedure ensures that it sanitizes the complete road and thereafter carries out domination. But to the extent that a vehicle emerges from somewhere, tries to ram a bus, etc., there is no doubt that there is an element of failure to detect that. And I'm sure all that will come out in the investigation subsequently. But I do again want to focus on this. The ROP is one of the most tiresome, one of the most fatiguing kind of operations which go on. Total predictability. Convoys here, no one needs to use rocket science to know when a convoy will come. Predictable timings of convoys every day coming up from Jammu or going down to Jammu are there, and you can't do very much about that.
All right, well, let me take that to Harinder Baweja, who's covered J&K security issues for so many years now. It's like deja vu, right? I mean, I remember when Pathankot happened, there was an entire defense panel report headed by a former lieutenant general which went into the lapses. I remember, they pointed out things like, you hadn't cut the grass properly. The terrorists were able to hide behind that grass. They put out a series of, suggestions like upgrading securities, random security audits, quick reaction commando platoons in all major military establishments. I don't think any of this has been done. The point is, are we learning from the past attacks? Are we learning anything?
I mean, Nidhi, first of all, I'm glad we're talking about lapses and not about taking revenge, which is what a lot of channels seem to be doing. I think we've lulled ourselves into complacency after every attack. You take Pulwama, General Hasnain is perhaps right in some ways that, okay, this car came and, rammed into a CRPF bus from a side street, but there was no intelligence, and to stop any attack, intelligence is critical. We did not know that there was a bomb maker procuring RDX or other explosives. You cannot make a bomb overnight. The explosives were stored somewhere. They were assembled. They were put into a car. They were turned into an IED. All of this went under the radar. But more importantly, I think we also seem to have closed our eyes to what's happening on the ground. To me personally, what's really worrying is the fact that local Kashmiris are willing to convert their bodies into guided missiles. This is a new phenomena, probably the third in the 30 years of insurgency that I've been covering. And according to my sources, and I was speaking to a lot of people in South Kashmir, there are many boys willing to become part of such Fidain squads. I mean, imagine the level of motivation and indoctrination that takes. It's not easy to, kill yourself, but clearly there are enough people who are willing to do that. I think we need to take stock of that situation.
I think we need to talk about that in more detail as well. I just want to get a first comment from the former DG of the CRPF, Mr. Trivedi, who's back with us tonight. So, we were talking about the sort of lack of specific intelligence on this particular attack, and General Hussain is right. I mean, you can't always get a date and a time and a place that this is an attack that's going to take place. However, it seems a very sort of generic warning was given by intelligence agencies of something about to happen. Now, how does that work for you? I mean, do you often honestly find that these generic warnings by the Intelligence Bureau are often not taken seriously by forces because they are so vague in the time, the place, and could they have
or the method?
Yeah, exactly. And therefore, would you be wanting our intelligence apparatus to be strengthened?
Nidhi, not only are they generic, but they are so often. I mean, as a matter of fact, they become so routine that sometimes not enough attention is paid to them, one. Second, this was not a lone wolf attack. It's just not that one person got up and did this attack. Whole lot of people are involved. So how did all this slip the intelligence agencies? First time so much of explosives have come in, and there is talk that some of it has been procured from the mining areas in South Kashmir, and some might have come across the border. But all this must have taken time and effort, and if that had been there, then somewhere some amount of chattering on the should have been picked up to say that there can be a change in tactics, and the earlier SOP geared for IEDs and attacks by hurling grenades or firing at convoys could have been amended to that extent where such thing could have been taken care of. But again, coming back to that point of failure of SOP, I don't think there's a failure of SOP in the sense where the forces are concerned, but the SOPs get diluted under political pressure over a period of time. For instance, in the early days when convoys would move, the other side roads were all blocked. Now, over a period of time, they were said, no, there's no need to inconvenience people, allow them to move. Then there came a point where they said, don't have roadblocks, let the convoys be so you see, it was that kind of a dilution of the SOP, not at the level of the forces, but at a higher level, which has led to such kind of a thing, apart from the intelligence.
Which isn't necessarily a bad
I would
thing,
say
because
not failure, but
when the situation improved,
something was lacking, where this thing did not come out.
You have to change SOPs, I guess. If you saw an improvement in the situation, violence levels, if they were down at that point, perhaps there was a need to change that. But Mr. Trivedi,
Nidhi, when violence levels are down, you need political intervention.
Well, that's of course we missed completely.
Yes.
And that has
which we haven't done. Over the years, over the decades.
Since, after 2010, you had the interlocutors report, you've had, so many opportunities which you've missed.
Fair enough. If violence levels come down, you need to reduce all this thing. But the point is that if it was just it's not that the convoy holds up the people for all times to come. It is just a 1 or 2 hour time for the convoy to move through a critical area. Rest of the area is not so important. So maybe that critical area still needed some more attention than what was given to it. Definitely, as things will improve, we will have to withdraw. I mean, the biggest example before us in this country from which we can learn so much is Punjab, where militancy was much more violent than what we see in Jammu and Kashmir, and yet it was rolled back and rolled back so effectively it's not come back again. So we got to learn from those examples, and one of those examples was we put a very strong barricade on the fence with Punjab and Pakistan, and it stopped the flow of arms ammunitions into the country.
Well,
we had a top cop like Mr. Gill, you know, with the kind of personality and the leadership role he gave to the Punjab
so many
police,
variables in the JNK situation. You have the terrain.
Put them flesh out the militants.
Well,
I don't see
that
all
also
this
prevents you from completely
in Jammu Kashmir.
fencing the border and the
Can anyone
LOC,
of us recollect 10 good DGs of the state who have been in the past 5-10 years?
You know,
these are things
that's
that
an
have
important.
to be really
You know, that's
looked
also an
into.
important point. I want to ask Ambassador K.C. Singh then about this. The point is that when we've had reports, like I said, General Kampose's report about Pathankot. I mean, these just sit and gather dust. What are we learning from them? Do we have quick reaction teams at military installations? See, the point is, of course, if there's a suicide bomber, there is very little you can do to stop them. But at least our military installations, our soldiers should not become sitting ducks, I think, and we have to ask ourselves why this keeps happening to them again and again.
No, I think they're doing a lot of work. I think what is emerging from this is complacency sets in. The militant is constantly changing his tactics. He is getting latest feedback from whoever his handlers are, and they'll bypass whatever you do. So it's a constant game of cat and mouse, whereas this is clearly a sign of complacency where you brought your levels down because there was peace. And now for the last 6-8 months, it's been sullen again. The valley has been alienated. But you continue with the same SOPs rather than hardening yourself. So they've just fallen into a... And one point he raised KPS Gill. KPS Gill didn't handle Punjab by himself. At one stage, in fact, he was withdrawn. It's only in combination with Beyant Singh, when the Chief Minister came in, that the two working together managed to succeed. And it was not so much fence, etc. was there earlier also. It's when the villagers turned against the militant. And it's much more difficult to hide in Punjab because there are no hills, there are no forests. So the protection was given by the villager. When the villager turned against him and the political system reached out to them, that is when you can alienate the militant, which they haven't done in the valley.
So General Hasnain, that then brings us to what Harinder Baweja was saying earlier, that there is a challenge we need to deal with internally, which is of homegrown militancy of these young men who are now willing to become suicide bombers. This is a new phenomenon. You saw the Afghans do it, you saw the Pakistanis do it, and now to see our own boys do it. So the Pakistan angle is different. We're going to talk about that. That's certainly a huge factor. But what do we do internally to deal with this?
See, Nidhi, if you just ask someone, the strategic community in India, what is the broad concept of our response to a hybrid war situation which is existing in the valley, most people will tell you that there is a thing called an all-of-government approach which is required. When they say that, my next question would always be that the army, for example, has got a broad concept of what it wants to do, what it wants to achieve. It has achieved that many times over, and each time the situation has deteriorated. I would like to ask, what does the rest of the government agencies, what is their concept of operations, what is their aim of functioning, and what is the terminal situation that they are finally looking at? You see, when you do not have a strategy in place, then you only go by a one-dimensional thing, and that is the use of the military. The military is adept at it. They will continue delivering. They will bring the situation back to where it was many years ago again. But you will again find it deteriorating. The outreach, I always say, everyone in India knows what is to be done. We do not know how to do it. We need to demonstrate, just create a small model in 1 or 2 districts to find out how exactly we reach out to the people, carry out conversations with people without looking at outcomes of them. Everyone is looking at outcomes of the situation at the end of every year. What we need is a tremendous amount of conversation with people. And that is the way forward when it comes to reaching out to people.
So Harinder Baweja, who do we talk to? I mean, General Hasnain has a point. Okay, we need to reach out. And a lot of former army commanders like him are saying that. General Huda talks about that. but we don't know how to do it. So who could the government reach out to today?
Nidhi,
if
you
it
have to
had
revive the political process. You can't just put Kashmir in the freezer.
Course. Nidhi, the problem is that there is now you've reached a stage where there is a complete breakdown of trust between Kashmir and Delhi. Because 2008 happened, the Amarnath Rao, we moved on from there. 2010 happened. 2010 was, youth took to the streets, 116 died. Then you had 2016, which was like an uprising. It was like an intifada. Kashmir changed in unimaginable ways in 2016, where the youth even the Hurriyat in large parts became irrelevant. The government must have the appetite for engaging in a long process. It's not going to happen overnight. They did appoint an interlocutor. They did declare a ceasefire during Ramadan, and then they lost the appetite for it after Shujat Bukhari's death. Honestly, frankly, now with elections coming up, I don't foresee any outreach program. And that's scary.
That's scary, and it's also true.